Chairman, I will. And I will.
I feel like
There
I'm.
we go. You are live.
Is it, well, yeah, well, I'm used to being the person in the back, so this is awkward for me, but okay, let's go and do a roll call.
Senator Bouchard,
Excused, I guess.
Senator French,
Mr. Chairman, he is here. Should I bring him up as a panelist?
Yeah, that'd be great. And yeah, Markham is here while we're doing that.
Senator Cost, Senator Wasserberger,
Here.
Chairman Boner,
Here.
4 present, 1 excused.
Okay, great. First bill is House Bill 188. Representative Hunt, you're up. Welcome back to the Senate Ag Committee. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Mr. Chairman, I bring you House Bill 188. This, Mr. Chairman, is an effort that's something of an ongoing effort that, of course, as you well know, over the last couple of years of numerous bills and the attempts that we've made to give our irrigation districts around the state some more options and opportunities when it comes to getting money and funding for fixing and restoring their crumbling infrastructure. This, of course, was sort of came into a more needed light in wake of the canal collapse in Goshen County in summer of 2019. So, Mr. Chairman, what this bill aims to do is simply would allow for irrigation districts under certain circumstances to apply to SLIB for loans within certain parameters. And so, Mr. Chairman, unless there's any questions at this point, I just quick walk through the bill.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. Over on page 2 is where the new language starts. And Mr. Chairman, we're saying that that loans may be made to the irrigation districts for replacement or major maintenance project. This is in the engrossed version of the bill. We included or major maintenance projects, diversion, transmission, distribution. We're saying a couple lines down that a loan under this subsection shall be at an interest rate of greater than 1%, plus 75 thousandths of 1% for each year of the loan term in excess of 5 years, or the current equivalent yield of a U.S. Treasury security of the same duration, which may be adjusted every 5 years. And Mr. Chairman, that just, I'm not that familiar with financial lingo and so forth, but that is simply what LSO put together for the bill. So I will try to answer any questions if there are some there, but I kind of hope not, or that somebody else can tackle that. In the event of prepayment of the loan, interest rate shall not be calculated at the actual loan period, but no refund of interest payment shall be made to the to the borrowing entity. And then under this, any loan made under this subsection shall be made for a term of not fewer than 5 years, not greater than 25 years. And then, Mr. Chairman, the other small amendment that we made over on the House side was saying on line 15, the new sentence starting initially said the board may require an irrigation district to apply elsewhere for grants or loans, and we changed that to a shall, simply because we want this to be a loan of last resort, if a source of last resort, if you will. As you know, SLIB currently has the revolving account for drinking water for municipalities, but we don't want this to just be yet another avenue and a grab bag with the risk of depleting funds in there. And obviously, the irrigation districts already have access to certain funding through the Water Development Commission and perhaps elsewhere. But Mr. Chairman, in essence, that is the bill. Jumping down quickly though to bottom of page 2, Romanet 1, and just as more financial language, and over there and Romanets 2, 3, and 4, simply saying pledge of other revenues available to the irrigation district receiving a loan, mortgage covering all or part of the project, or by a pledge of the lease of the project, excuse me, and any other security device or requirement deemed advantageous or necessary by the board. And Mr. Chairman, the rest of the bill simply makes adjustments to statute, and that is it. So would stand for any questions.
Any questions, committee? Senator Wasserberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, how did you come up with the interest on the loan? Where does that come from?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Wasserberger, again, that was arrived at by the attorneys who put the bill together. And my understanding is that that's based on just the current loan rates and what's standard for U.S. Treasury loans. So
Yeah, it looks, I mean, we're covered because it's the greater of either a 2/3 amendment there with that 1% plus 0.075% or the treasury yield for the same amount of time. So it's the greater of either of those two. So I think that's, pretty covers us pretty well. We're going to get a decent return, but it's still a government loan. We're not going to, be looking to, make like $500,000 or something on it, like a bowl or something, but maybe we will, who knows?
And Mr. Chairman, that'd be my next question. How, is there a limit to the amount of the loan?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Wasserberger, that's not specifically addressed in the bill, but I believe that would be at the discretion of SLIB. And so if if an irrigation district goes before that board and requests such a loan, I think that would be at the discretion of the 5 state electeds to determine how much they would release in any lump sum.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm asking all the questions. So that could be a huge number. That could be, so irrigation district, for this situation that you cited in Goshen County, you were talking about the collapse of essentially the underground canal. That was millions of dollars. I think, did I read, was it not 90 million? What was it? It was a lot of money. No. Anyway, okay.
Mr. Chairman and Senator, again, I think that would be left to the discretion of SLIB, but that's also why one of the chief reasons we changed on page 2, line 15, the may to shall, so that it is by as strictly as possible as a loan of last resort. So it doesn't become a loan, just another avenue and a loan of first resort. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Any further questions, committee? Okay, so I'll go back to the top of page 2. It says it's for project of diversion, transmission, and distribution. Does this include dams? Like, I don't know, in La Perla area? Yeah. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it would, and I know, and I'm assuming, that if we're keeping in mind consideration of LaPrel's issues, I think that could fall under this. That might be something that the committee would like to exclude, because obviously that would be highly pricey potentially. But
Right, well, it's for that reason I want to kind of include it as an option, but frankly, so. I guess the question is whether a dam counts as a diversion or not, and I just don't know enough. Maybe that's a question for the Board of Control or the Water Development Commission or.
Mr. Chairman, that would probably be a better question for them, but I would think that would fall under that purview, but
Okay,
I would let them answer that.
okay, fair enough. Any further questions for me? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Representative Hunt. Please stand by. We have a few more legislators with us. Senator Steinmetz.
How much
Hello,
was that loan?
committee. Well, let me say, first of all, I'm Sherry Steinmetz, representing Senate District 3. And I'll follow up on the question by the good Senator Wasserberger, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman. So I think we have come out around 10 million on the temporary repair. And then since investigating further and requirements by the Bureau of Reclamation, we are required to do both tunnels now. So we're looking at maybe 20 to 30 million, depending on what methods are used. If we do the permeation grouting, or they're looking at daylighting tunnel number 2. So there's 2 tunnels included now. They have applied for a FEMA grant. And so they need just kind of the 25% of that, whatever that would be, if they are approved by that. So that's the status of the Goshen Irrigation District project.
Mr. Chairman? So the water's flowing through the canal now. Is that correct? Well, it's winter time, so it's not, but
Mr.
it
Chairman,
does.
Senator Wasserberger, they're doing some inline repairs right now to we had to put metal ribs in that tunnel. And so when they did that, because of the pooling effect behind those ribs, we've really restricted flow. It's only at 70%. They're going to try to weld some metal in between there just to keep that from pooling in between those ribs, to get that flow going back more than 70%. We're hoping to get at least 75-80% of our water down the ditch. And then they're looking at the permanent repair, which could either be the permeation grouting, which would be a 10-foot grout. So they'd go do a soil sample, take that out and identify what would make that to make it into concrete. And then they'd put that in, and it would be a 10-foot tunnel outside the tunnel to recompact that and get that solidified, possibly, depending on if they go that way. They use that technique around Lake Mead and some other places, and it's well utilized and well proven. So yeah, so on and in favor of the bill, Mr. Chairman. As we see our water development accounts being tapped into by the Board of Control budget and some of the other things that are going on, and our revenues declining, which obviously affects those accounts, I think we'll see several irrigation districts that may need a little help and it's really, there's not a lot of places to get money for irrigation districts just because of how they're categorized in statute. For example, the State Land and Investment Board has been great to work with, and they found us the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, but those criteria to qualify for that are very strict, and we qualified before just because of the very strict situation we were in. So, and there are a lot of people kind of looking at that money now more closely, that pot of money that they can get. So it's limited, the sources of loans that are available for irrigation districts, because they're kind of a special entity in statute. And because honestly, we hadn't, we're just now getting to the lifespan of our infrastructure as well. So a lot of times those things that are unseen go unthought of until something terrible happens. So anyway, that was the impetus of this bill, not just for us, but for other irrigation districts. The good chairman here, that you guys have been working very hard on the aging irrigation infrastructure in this committee, and we appreciate that work. And so hopefully this could be another tool in the tool chest, as our good chairman of judiciary always says.
Some tools more lethal than others, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So
Mike.
it is the plan of the Goshen County Irrigation District to use this after July 1.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know. We have to see how their FEMA loan comes back, and I'm not sure when that will be. It was Treasurer Myers' idea, and it did come from the GID situation. And so certainly they are looking for places to find loans. And to your question about, they could be applying for a huge loan and all of this. They still have to have the collateral to pay that back and the assessment to pay that back. And so even when we received the loan from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which had some loan forgiveness associated with it, they had to raise their assessment $5 an acre to be able to qualify for that.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Set the bill.
So the next question is, so when you get your allotment of water, does that farmer or rancher, because of the collapse of the canal and putting it back together and then eventually the loan, they have to pay that amount to the irrigation district as a part of being that district, or does the district pay it?
Mr. Chairman, yes, they are the district essentially. And so, yes, they will pay for it.
So, Mr. Chairman, that's my next question. How are they going to afford a bill like that? I mean, how much is it going to be to the individual producer?
Mr. Chairman, we're still looking at that. And yeah, I mean, that is at the forefront of everyone's mind. And of course, we need it to be affordable, but there are not a lot of avenues to get them help. So we're looking at that and doing our very best to find all the grants and, thus the FEMA grant, that would be a 75% match.
And the feds cover 75.
Mhm.
Right, so it's not as if this would be the only way of paying for the program, and the affordability of the loan will be a primary factor in determining what portion the loan would cover to pay for this infrastructure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And, the other part of that is it's a loan of last resort as well. So if there was something else that could meet those needs, and I think Director Scoggin might have, further input on that, but things are fairly limited. When we went for the MRG funding, we tried to get that during the emergency and in the initial days of that. And irrigation districts don't qualify for that. They're not covered under that. And so we had a bill that talked about putting them in there as a loan of last resort, and we didn't pass that last year because we had the emergency funding in another bill, and that was more of an emergency fund too. So then, we're in this unique position where, we're not in the emergency, and yet we're still dealing with the effects of an emergency. And so it's a kind of a unique situation that I hope not a lot of our irrigation districts find themselves in. And La Perelle is another prime example of something we'll have to deal with. I think they're looking at FEMA money for that as well. But it is something of great concern because that would flood I-25 and could be a real issue to the entire state. So.
Any further questions, committee? All right, well, thank you, Senator.
On and for the bill. Thank you,
right.
Mr. Chairman.
That's what I figured. Okay. Representative Diamond, you're here, you want to say anything or? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we'd like to recognize legislators here. And so just want to double check. Okay. Let's see, do we have a state agency online here? Let's go to them next.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll bring Director Scoggins over.
Okay, welcome, Director. Feel free to offer any additional input you have on this bill.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Scoggin. I'm the Director for the Office of State Lands and Investments, and I have with me this evening Amanda Sewell. She is our Assistant Director for our Administrative and Financial Services Division, which deals mainly with our SLIB grant loan programs. If I could just offer a little more background here. As Senator Steinmetz mentioned, the idea of allowing irrigation districts to take advantage of the capital construction loan program came out of some meetings with the governor's office, the treasurer, the secretary of state, and with Goshen Irrigation District. As she mentioned, when the tunnel collapse happened, it was an emergency situation and we were trying to figure out funding. we were beating the bushes and trying to find everything applicable that we could. We were able, just based on the facts of the circumstances with GID, we were able to help them qualify for some emergency funding through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund in the amount of $4 million, which I think included $3 million in principal forgiveness. And then they also were able to qualify for a smaller loan for reclamation in the amount of, I think, $378,000. The problem with the Clean Water SRF and even the Drinking Water SRF, there is some pretty good funding in those pots, but they're pretty nuanced programs. And so whether or not an irrigation district would qualify for funding under those programs, it's going to be based on a fact by fact individual basis. Not all irrigation districts and their situations are going to qualify for that. So it became apparent that we needed to look for other sources of funding. And as Senator Steinmetz mentioned, we also looked at MRG. Under the current MRG program as it's constructed statutorily, the irrigation district just didn't qualify for that. But also for this biennium, we've had a significant decrease in the available funding under the MRG program. So there's not a whole lot of funding there. With respect to the proposal here to include irrigation districts, we don't think that there would be a huge burden on the agency to include them. We think we could absorb that administrative burden. We would need to make some rule changes, but nothing super significant. And then if I could just comment on Senator Wasserberger, you questioned where the interest rate for the irrigation district's loan in the proposed bill, where that came from. That is, that's actually the rate that's in the statute 16.1.111 applicable to infrastructure and road and street projects under the construction loan program. And I would note that the aggregate of all outstanding loans made under this capital construction loan program is $400 million, $200 million for infrastructure projects, $200 million for road and street projects. That's how it's set out in statute. Currently, we have 7 loans on the infrastructure side of this program. They range in terms from 5 years to 25 years. The interest rates range from 1% to 2.5%. The amount of the loans are everything from $114,000 to $20 million. Available funding right now on the infrastructure side is $171,130,908. And there is a full $200 million still available on the capital construction road piece of this. So that's a little bit of background on this program. And as Senator Steinmetz mentioned, you know, there is a requirement, and I guess Representative Hunt too, there is a requirement that the irrigation districts look for other funding first, which could be a myriad of things from, you know, FEMA to, you know, water development, clean water. There's a lot of different options, but certainly, as was suggested too, this could be another tool in the toolbox, if you will, for those times and circumstances when the other loan programs and grant programs just don't fit. Amanda, do you have anything to add?
I don't.
Okay. With that, Mr. Chairman, we would stand for any questions that the committee might have.
Any questions for us, Ola? Okay, I just, same question, I guess, for you, Director, since you be the one administering it. The language on the top of page 2, line 2, talking about, you know, it's for projects of diversion, transmission, distribution. Would you think a dam would be included in that? Or would you have to add something along the line of storage?
Mr. Chairman, we were not involved in drafting of the bill, but I do recall on the House side, there was concern about just, you know, replacing infrastructure, that there would be money available for major maintenance too, due to, you know, the aging infrastructure that we have within the state of Wyoming. I don't believe that the issue of whether you know, a dam would qualify as a diversion or whatnot, I don't believe that that was discussed. I would guess that that would depend upon how the state engineer's office might define it, or perhaps how this committee would want to define it or further limit it.
Okay, thank you. Any questions at all? Okay, thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Okay, any further comment in the virtual portion? Feel free to raise your hand if anybody wants to comment there. So do you have any takers?
Mr. Chairman, there is no one else in the waiting room.
Okay, very good. I'll open up to in-person public comment. Any discussion here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. We just recently passed policy to try to look for ways to help out the irrigation districts with the problems they're having with the aging infrastructure. This fits right in with our policy, and for the reasons outlined by the sponsors of the bill, Wyoming Farm Bureau supports this legislation. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd sit for any questions.
Any questions, committee? No? All right. Thank you,
you.
sir.
Mr. Chairman, Keith Kennedy on behalf of the Wyoming Crop Improvement Association. Ditto, I guess is the shortest I can say there. One other thing that I'd point out too, when we think about these kind of projects, that's also very important for what the assessed value of that ground is too. When we run out of water on property, it changes which property class it's in, and a drastic amount of difference in what the property tax per acre is. And so I think that's also something to bear in mind when we think about these funds. And with that, I'd welcome questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Mr. Kennedy? Okay, thank you, sir. Oh, go, Senator Wasberg,
I was just gonna make a comment.
Mike,
Franklin used to say,
your mic.
you know the worth of water when the well runs dry.
As I learned last spring at our house.
Any further public comment? Okay, going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Okay, moved by Senator Wasserberger, second by Senator Cost. Any discussion?
Do we want to add storage?
Yeah, okay, Senator Cost, go ahead and turn your mic.
I would suggest possibly an amendment to consider to add dams in there so that if there is a possibility of the use of it, that it could be there at least. I'd hate to leave it out and find out later on that it could have maybe helped a little bit.
So maybe put the word storage comma before diversion on
Yeah.
page 2, line 2. That
Let's
was
That'd be
do-
perfect.
Okay, on line 2, after of insert storage, comma,
okay.
I move that, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
very good. Any discussion on that amendment? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Amendment carried. I'm sorry, is that okay, Representative Hunt? Senator Thomas, that doesn't change it. Okay, okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, well, it passes anyway, so. Any further discussion on the bill? Okay, question be called. Let's call the roll.
Senator Bouchard, Senator Bouchard. Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Cost,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
Chairman Boner.
Aye.
5-0, do pass as amended.
Okay, and you got this one on the floor, Senator Steinmetz? You have this one on the floor then? Okay, very good. Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have House Bill 229, Representative Nyman.
Good evening, Chairman Barr.
Feel free to introduce yourself and go into the bill.
Very good. Good evening, Chairman Bonner and distinguished senators. My name is Chip Nyman, House District 1, and I bring you House Bill 229 for your favorable consideration, I trust. Some of the name of that particular bill is Livestock Identification Choice Act. A little bit of background on what is the nexus and the prompting of this legislation is for many years prior to 2013, livestock industries and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, worked together to develop a workable program to increase the USDA's ability to be able to conduct essential animal disease tracking or tracing in the event of a foreign animal disease outbreak. Well, that work culminated in 2013 with the USDA's implementation of a new regulation, traceability of livestock moving interstate. That new regulation requires a certain adult cattle and bison to be officially identified when moved interstate. And that regulation, the USDA recognized the USDA would both improve animal disease traceability and provide livestock producers with the flexibility to be able to choose among various official identification devices when transporting their livestock interstate. Well, the new regulation authorizes livestock producers to choose among the following official identification means or devices: metal ear tags, radio frequency identification, ear tags, brands, tattoos, group lot identification, or back tags. Well, in 2019, to kind of give you an idea of what's prompting this need for this legislation, without following any of the legislative protocols or steps necessary to change existing law, the USDA issued a mandate to phase out the use of metal ear tags and require livestock producers to exclusively use RFID tags beginning January the 1st of 2023. Well, a lawsuit was filed, and that was against the USDA for an unlawful mandate, and the federal government quickly withdrew it. However, in July of 2020, again, without following any of the legislative steps necessary to change the existing law, the USDA published a simple notice in the Federal Register and informing the industry that it still plans to eliminate the use of metal ear tags and require the exclusive use of RFID tags. Well, the effect of this unusual action by the USDA is to deprive livestock producers the flexibility to choose among the various official animal identification devices authorized for use under current law. And that was the current CFR 9, Part 86. And that is in the Code of Federal Regulations. And that was determined that those were the official forms of identification that were available for the choices to livestock producers to provide that traceability. Well, the purpose of HB 229 is to codify into the Wyoming law the various animal identification devices that current federal law verifies and or authorizes Wyoming livestock producers to choose among when shipping their livestock interstate. With 229, we will ensure that the Wyoming livestock producers are not deprived of their ability to decide which official animal identification device best meets their individual needs when they ship livestock interstate. It will protect Wyoming livestock producers from the type of overreach that the USDA is attempting to do and by circumventing the existing laws. If the USDA lawfully amends the existing law, then 229 will need to be updated to reflect any such lawful amendments. But until that time, HB 229 will serve as legal authorization for Wyoming livestock producers to continue to exercise their already authorized in the code, those different types of identifications that have already been afforded to them. And so while simultaneously providing livestock producers with the flexibility to choose which type of animal traceability they desire. And so that is the nexus of this. What we're wanting to do is we're wanting to codify into state law statute what is already existing and was decided on by the federal in 2013. And what we're wanting to do is to require them to go through the legislative process if they want to change something instead of just simply mandating it. And we're wanting to codify that into our state laws is what this is all about. And so if you'll follow with me, I'll take you through the bill. As you can see, and there's also an amendment. I trust you folks have received that amendment. I had that emailed to you here. It's amendment number 103, House Amendment number 103, proposed amendment. And I don't know how you guys want me to do that. I can read that amendment into as we go through, and I can read it to you how it would adjust the bill as it stands right now, if you'd like, or do you want to look at that amendment? If I
Okay,
have
well,
any-
we can
discuss that,
pause
or-
here. You don't explain the bill as it is, or
What's that?
you don't explain the bill as it is?
Yes, that was.
Okay, well, we'll pause there for questions and then we can go on the amendment. How about
Okay,
that?
very good, sir.
Okay, so any questions right now? No, okay. Senator Wasberg.
What's a back tag?
Mr. Chairman. Senator Wasserberg, a back tag is a piece of paper with a number on it that is what's glued onto the back of the animal when it's going in to be slaughtered or into a sale location or anything like that. It's an identifier that follows that animal as it goes through the sale process. And that number is identified with the animal and to the lot of the group that it came in with when it's identified. It provides traceability of that group lot or wherever that animal follows and goes to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With USDA require, or saying they're requiring this, will there be any problem with our cattle getting to produce or processing plants because of what the USDA has said, or will they still accept the other tags?
Right, Mr. Chairman. Senator Cost, no, right now they will receive them. That's what's happened. Those two different lawsuits back the USDA off, and they can currently recognize the current federal codes that are already there. So no, it's not going to limit anything. And this certainly does not limit any other types of identification that come down the road. I mean, it's not limiting RFID. It's simply stating that livestock producers have these options that are already in federal codes, and they can have those various options that do provide that traceability. So no, there would be no restrictions whatsoever to current ability to ship or to sell livestock.
Any further questions, committee? Okay, looks good. Go ahead and explain the amendment. That'd be good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you go and go to page 3, line 15 of the bill, you will see we want to delete where it says this section on line 15 of page 3 of the bill and insert animal disease traceability. Upon discussion with some of the stakeholders in this, they wanted to make sure that that identification was in there to make sure that there's no confusion about basically ownership or transfer of ownership or anything like that. What we're talking about here is the CFR talks specifically about the different types of identification that can be used to provide traceability for disease traceability. And so we wanted to insert that. Also on page 3, line 19, we want to delete the word where it says federal government and insert the Wyoming Livestock Board. Because what we're wanting to do is to provide that kind of oversight and local statewide condoning or recognition of any new type of identification that would come down the line. And so, and that would become, if there was ever something that they would ever come down years ago and would be passed through the federal regulations that also would have to be cleared by our Wyoming Livestock Board and verified by our guys here. So we're wanting to do. So those would be the two amendments.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I notice on here, it's for the page 3, line 19, it says delete federal government and insert the Wyoming Livestock Board. There's already a "the" in the on line 19, right previous to federal government is "the." You don't want two "thes" together, do you?
No, the don't sound very good. No, we can drop a "the" if that, yeah, that would be, yeah, no, that'd be fine.
I'm sure we can take that into account when we make the motion.
Yes, sir. Thanks for catching that, Senator Cost.
So,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
so the question is, we're replacing the federal government with the Wyoming Livestock Board,
Mhm.
but the Wyoming Livestock Board has to follow 9 CFR Part 86.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a statute that will be changed. If that's changed federally, if they go through the proper channels and change any of these identifications, then yes.
And we have to change.
Mhm. Yes. And that would be to
So
our state,
The Wyoming Livestock Board has to follow federal law.
They would, yes, they do right now. Mhm. That's correct, sir. Yeah, we would recognize that. We're just simply saying that they can't come and just mandate something without going through the legislative process, which they've tried twice already. And so we're wanting to codify what is actually on the federal and to the state statutes in an effort to verify that Wyoming recognizes those opportunities and those options to our livestock producers.
I just have a question how that language would work. I mean, does the livestock board approve additional methods based off the CFR, or how's it? It seems like if it's a CFR, maybe that's a question for the livestock board. Do they actually go in and approve any changes, or how? I'm just wanting to make sure the amendment would work.
You mean as far as how to change that or how that would, would
Right, it
work?
just seems where if you adopt the amendment and read any additional methods are later approved by the livestock board,
Mhm.
I was just wondering at what point do they approve changes in the CFR?
The Wyoming Livestock Board
Yeah.
would also be recognized as our state, but yes, we would recognize those changes as well.
Okay. So it'd have to be some sort of updated rules. to-
Yes, it would be updated. Yeah, if there was any
Okay.
changes, then it would have to be updates to our statutes to reflect those changes, as long as they've gone through the legislative process.
Okay. All right. Any further questions? All right, well, thank you, Representative.
Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Stay close. Senator Stevens, you have anything?
Mr. Chairman, just on and for the bill, and I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just kind of a good government piece for us that they need to, have them go through the legislative process rather than their rulemaking to try to change something. And so we've had several bills this year to kind of address some of those issues. And so here's another good little bill for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions for Senator Stevens? Okay, thank you very much. Hey, Mr. True, welcome back to the Ag Committee.
Mr. Chairman, committee, it's good to see you in person.
Yeah,
You're
very
all bigger than you were the last time I talked to you. Mr. Chairman, really, I'm just here to answer any questions the committee might have, and I might reference what you just asked. The Livestock Board does have one separate official ID that's Wyoming only. We do have a green identification tag that we use, a metal 9-digit tag that we use for movement of females out of the designated surveillance area. So there is the potential if if the rule would change at the federal level, that we may augment that particular piece of ID for the state as well. So that would be a place for the Livestock Board, additional approved ID for the Livestock Board. As the representative did a great job of explaining what this is for and how it affects us, and met our concerns absolutely 100% on making sure that it was clear that there are no exemptions from abiding by current federal interstate movement requirements, doesn't affect brand inspection, identification, any of that. So we appreciate that hard work by the bringers of the bill. Doesn't affect the way we perform our work with the brucellosis surveillance program or any of that. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions, committee? Okay, so when the proposed amendment works for you, that's functional.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, thank you, Mr. True. Okay, do I have anybody online that wants to comment? Once again, raise your hand if so.
Mr. Chairman, there is no one online.
All right, great. Any further public comment here in person? Mr. McGack?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim McGagnon with the Wyoming Stockholders Association. I first want to express my appreciation to Representative Nyman for working with the industry as this bill was moving forward to make sure that it met our concerns. And what we want to be assured of is that we're totally on board that we don't want the federal government dictating what system we have to use, but we want to make sure that we have a process so that if the federal government says you have to do X, and as an example, say Nebraska said, we won't accept any cattle that aren't so identified, that our producers have that flexibility to say, I want to use that because I want my cattle to be able to go to Nebraska or wherever. So with the amendment that was proposed, we're very supportive of this bill. Without the amendment, we did have some serious concerns. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions, committee? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr.
Back.
Chairman, Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation, again, sitting in support of this bill, appreciate the amendments. And I do want to make one thing clear. It does not outlaw the use of electronic tags. That's still allowable. We we hope that that would just be voluntary rather than mandatory. So with that, Mr. Chairman, in sitting in support of the bill, I would sit for any questions, sir.
Any questions for the Farm Bureau?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any further public comment? Okay, going once, going twice, public comment is closed. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Senator Cost, second by Senator Wasberger. Any discussion or amendments? Mike. Mike.
House Bill 229. We're going to, on page 3, line 15, delete this section and insert animal disease traceability. And then on page 3, line 19, we will delete federal government. And we will insert Wyoming Livestock Board.
Okay, moved by Senator Wasberger, second by Senator Costing. Discussion on the amendment. Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. We're back on the bill. Committee for discussion. Okay, question being called. Let's call the roll.
Senator Bouchard.
Aye.
Senator French,
Aye.
Senator Cost,
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger,
Aye.
Chairman Boner.
Aye.
5 aye, do pass as amended.
Okay, very good. Thanks, everyone. Just a reminder to submit your requests for interim topics by tomorrow. And Representative Nyman, who's going to take this? Representative Nyman. Hey. Okay. Who's taking this on the floor? Excuse me? Who's taking this on the floor? Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, so once again,